Sorry, you revoked my overtime privileges yesterday.
This was several years ago when I worked at a redacted big name coffee shop. My shift was 5 a.m. to 1:30 p.m., and often around 1 p.m. giant groups of kids on school field trips would come through the area. This was a coffee shop located in a major CA city, very close to a bunch of museums. I had been working a lot of overtime because of it, to help my coworkers through the rush. I got written up by my supervisor for doing too many overtime shifts without approval. I was explicitly informed to not work overtime again. I had lost overtime privileges until corporate deemed I could have them again, and working overtime again prior to that would result in further disciplinary action. The day after I was written up, right as my shift ended, 3 big buses full of kids unloaded and filled the shop. At 1:30 p.m. on the dot my watch alarm went off and I went to go clock out. The store manager who wrote me up the day prior said, "Wait, where are you going?" I reminded her that I'd lost my overtime privileges, clocked out, retrieved the shift drink I'd made for myself right before the rush, and left. The next day I was informed my overtime privileges had been reinstated. Edits, whoa, this took off in a way I didn't expect. This was almost a decade ago, when I was in my early 20s and an eager to please employee, so I didn't demand they take the write-up off my record, unfortunately. My coworkers all knew about the write-up and were pissed about it too, so none of them were mad when I spite left to prove a point. I worked the super morning shift by choice because I used to be a morning person, because the field trips were super sporadic and there was no way to predict them without knowing the field trip schedules of the entire region. Our manager had somehow managed to avoid ever experiencing one since she typically left around noon. Once she saw what they were like and started believing us, they scheduled one of the afternoon shift people to come in an hour early so we had better overlap.
Was told I had an 8.5-hour shift and not to leave early, so I started working for only 8.5 hours.
I work as a supervisor at a manufacturing plant, and I was hired for an 8-hour shift as the nighttime supervisor. As soon as I started, they changed, and said they really considered the shift to be from 11 p.m. to 7:30, so they would need it to be 8.5 hours. I'm salaried, there wasn't much I could do, and it wasn't a big deal, so I said okay. As I get into a groove working there, I find out that the second shift supervisor is a train wreck. No one would describe him to me, just saying I had to meet him. He leaves an hour or 2 early from his shift 2 to 3 times a week. Friday nights he leaves the plant at 5:30 and tells them to call him if there are any problems. He calls out, at a minimum, once a week. It's psychotic. Every time he is out, I come in at around 8 p.m. to cover the last 3 hours of his shift and my full shift. At least once a week, I just do it. I figure the company is going to deal with it, but as time passes, they obviously aren't. Structurally, the company is just as bad as him. Infighting, rivalries, backstabbing, all of that, but I stay on nights so I don't see it much. Then Sarah starts as my boss. I actually have 2 bosses, which is how every successful employee works. Sarah is a nightmare. Sarah wants me to work 11 to 11 on MTW, and 11 to 10 on Friday. I dig in my heels, document like crazy, and after a couple months of harassment, HR actually backs me up and she has to stop. But now Sarah is angry, and she sees me leaving at 7:15 one morning after coming in 2 hours early. She sends an email clarifying our time expectations. Second shift train wreck calls in that night, so I come in at 8, and the next morning, Sarah sees me leave at 7:10. I get an email saying she is coming in early to talk to me, and when she shows up, I'm getting a formal warning for my early departures, going into my personnel file. I've never been written up in my life. During the meeting, with HR in attendance, she said I am expected to be there for my 8.5-hour shift. I made sure that the expectation was on record for an 8.5-hour shift, which HR documented. The next week, the second shift supervisor is out 2 days. After the first day, Sarah asks me the next morning why I didn't come in early, as there were problems in his shift, and I said I fulfilled my 8.5-hour shift, and I'm not responsible for his. They had to hire a contractor at $125 an hour to cover all of his missed time, which amounted to 19 weeks this past year. Eventually they hired a 4th supervisor at $85,000 per year to cover his gaps. Sarah got demoted, and I only ever work 8.5 hours.
I can't order a drink you're advertising and have open ingredients for? Fine.
Not sure if it fits in here or there is a more suitable sub, but here goes. I'm in the UK and was with friends at one of the main coffee shop brands. I won't say which one, but it's similar to Cost a Lot. It was a few days after Christmas last year, important for later. When I was served by the barista, it was obvious I was going to have an experience. This guy acted haughtily and spoke to people with a sneer, and came across like he considered himself a prince amongst men. He had a long floppy fringe that he kept brushing out of his contempt-filled eyes every few seconds. He clearly didn't want to be there or deal with the likes of me. Awkward for both of us. It was a two-man team, so a barista would take the order and make the drink. So he had to make whatever anyone ordered. It was very early January, and the shop still has advertisements up for Christmas seasonal drinks. I'm a fan of uncommon flavored coffee or hot chocolate, and said shop was advertising a Black Forest hot chocolate. Black Forest is basically dark chocolate, black cherry and cream. I ordered one and the barista looked me up and down and sneered, "That's a Christmas drink." Me, yes. Barista, it's after Christmas. Me, yes. Barista, smirking, so I can't make you a Christmas drink. Me, but you're advertising it and you still got the ingredients open behind the counter. This drink is basically a shot of the flavored sauce, hot chocolate, and cream on top. It's not that onerous or taxing to make compared to a normal hot chocolate. It's literally a normal hot chocolate with a flavor syrup put in. Barista, sighing and rolling his eyes, "It's not available right now." I wondered if he was being a tool for some unknown superiority complex, was being lazy and didn't want to make this beverage, or if there really was some directive. So I threw up a weather balloon question. Me, okay fine. In that case, would I be able to buy a single shot of a flavored syrup please? It says they are 35p on the board. Barista, dismissively, I don't see why not. Me, can I order a shot of the black cherry syrup there, but in a medium-sized takeaway cup? Barista tuts and silently turns, gets a shot of said syrup in a cup for me and contemptuously places it in front of me. Anything else? He sneers. Cue my malicious compliance. I slide cup back to him and say, "Can you make a medium hot chocolate in this cup for me please, and stir it well before you put the whipped cream on top?" Barista grimaces and realizes that I followed his instructions completely and still got myself a Black Forest hot chocolate. I stand and watch him make it, which he does with the most reluctant and bitter energy imaginable. For the record, it was pretty good.
How to break a dress code.
I broke the dress code at my last firm because of shoes. I got called to the carpet for wearing black Skechers to work, so I started coming in every day dressed to the nines. We're talking cufflinks, high-quality silk ties, gold-face metal band watch, pocket squares, some of the finest bourbon wingtips you ever laid eyes on. I got tailored dress shirts and custom suits cut for beep's sake. It wasn't cheap. I did this every day, while making sure to casually point out that the very managers who complained about me were wearing keds in the office. This went on for a few months. The interns and staff started dressing like me. We started comparing notes on tie knots and pocket square folds. We got high and tight haircuts with straight razor shaves. We bought badger hair shaving brushes and eucalyptus shaving soap. The partners started getting embarrassed as we were dressing considerably nicer than they cared to. They had a big meeting and declared the entire dress code dead. Jeans, t-shirts, flip-flops. All fair game unless you had a client meeting.
He wanted all his stuff back, so I made sure he for everything.
I posted this in our petty revenge and a lot of people thought it would fit well here. I just copied and pasted right from my other post. Obligatory, I'm on mobile, so forgive me for formatting. So my last relationship was beyond bad, he was all sorts of abusive and controlling. At one point I had the strength to break up with him, but then we got back together after we discussed some things. Stupid I know, but yeah, love and all that. Well, anyways, one of the things we agreed on was that he and I would stop drinking alcohol because he was beyond crazy aggressive when he drank, and I wanted to support his sobriety. This is really important. Fast forward about 8 months or so and we got into a huge fight, and I not only broke up with him, I kicked him out of the house and told him he wasn't ever allowed back inside. We'd been living together over a year at this point, so his mom got in touch with me about getting his stuff. While on the phone with her, I could hear him in the background saying, "Make sure they get everything I own or bought. I want it all back." Apparently even stuff he gifted me he wanted back, but honestly I didn't care. I was happy to get rid of anything related to him. While cleaning our room up and gathering everything, I started to come across numerous bottles and cans of alcohol. It seems he had been drinking again for a while and was hiding the evidence in the room. I mean, he was hiding them under the bed, in his guitar case, rolled up in his clothes, in some old backpacks of mine, and so on and so forth. He had said he wanted everything of his, so any bottle and the few unopened cans I found went straight into one of the garbage bags of his stuff. By the time I had gathered everything up, I had 3 bags of stuff and one was basically all just the alcohol. Dropping him off was just so satisfying. He actually called moments after I left his parents' place ranting about how petty and immature I was being. My response: "Well, you wanted all of your stuff back, and those definitely weren't mine. Plus I figured you'd probably need a drink to deal with the breakup." I promptly ended the call and blocked him on everything. Most satisfying thing I've ever done. Edit. Firstly, thank you everyone for the words of encouragement and everything. This happened years ago, but knowing people are still proud of me for leaving means the world to me. Also, there's definitely a lot about this story that didn't get posted, such as cops having to be involved and other things. I didn't put open cans or unscrew and bottle lids just for the fact I didn't want to risk ruining his stuff, as that'd be a huge headache and everything.
Ex-wife told me to remove all my stuff from her storage unit. So I did.
My ex-wife and I split because she cheated. So our separation was quite tumultuous. She still hasn't apologized for the act of cheating and still denies it, even though I know beyond any reasonable doubt that she did. I was incredibly hurt at the time, and I'll admit I wasn't acting my best. But I still tried to treat her fairly. When she left, we agreed that she would take over the payment on our car because she needed it for work. Our other car was totally paid off and I couldn't afford the payment on the one that she drove. But I agreed to leave my name on the loan because her credit didn't qualify. TBH, I didn't really have an alternative. I told her that she could keep it for as long as she made the payments. And that if she paid it off, I would immediately sign her over the title. But if she started flaking on the payments, I would have the car voluntarily repossessed. I also agreed to give her the washer and dryer on the condition that she take over the car payments. I had purchased the washer and dryer but had no use for them because I lived in an apartment at the time. This is important for later. Well, we inevitably got into a disagreement over the parenting of our children. I can't remember exactly what it was about, TBH. And she randomly showed up with the car, handed me the keys, and said, "Have fun figuring out how to make the payments." She knew I couldn't afford them. And then ended with "and get all your s*** out of my storage unit." We hadn't finished entangling the mess of items in our jointly owned storage unit, but she wanted it done immediately because she was mad. So I did what she asked. I went over that day to get my s*** out of our storage unit. While I was in there, I saw the washer and dryer sitting in the corner and immediately remembered that I had only given them to her on the condition that she pay off the car. So I took them. I had absolutely zero need for them at the time. But she had very specifically wanted my s*** out of her storage unit. So who was I to argue? She called me a day later screaming about it, telling me that she had filed a police report. I just laughed, knowing they wouldn't do anything because it was my property. The story gets better. As it turns out, she was just angry and actually wanted the car back. Well, the day after she had dropped it off on me, I got into a freak accident and totaled it. Everyone was okay. So she ended up without a car and I never had to make a single payment on it. The universe wanted to maliciously comply with her demands.
May your day be filled with joy and happiness. And please remember to like, share, and subscribe for more quality content every day.